And welcome to Cabomil News and Community Update. This is Corey Riggs with Claudia Velo. Today is October 16th, and we are recording the October 18th show Sunday at 6 p.m. So if you're listening there, you can also go check us out on Facebook Live at Cabomil News. You're going to see a lot of bonus material there. Well, Claudia, we have a great show today. How are you doing, by the way?
I'm doing great.
Yeah.
I traveled for the first time since January. So
and how
good.
was your travel? How was it?
It was amazing. Actually, everybody on the plane was full. It was people leaving Cabo, all happy travelers. I was actually one of 3 non-tourists arriving into LA.
Wow.
And I was very impressed to see how clean and sterile everything was and how quick it was. I had never gone through immigration at LA so
quickly.
So
yeah, when I traveled to LA, I think in late April. So that was still right in the middle of things. And I was one of 3 people on the plane, and they lost my bag. So.
Oh, wow. It can happen.
Well, so you're coming to us live from the international Los Angeles studios.
Correct.
And I am coming to you live from Tucson, Arizona, and actually from Sabino Recovery, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. But both of us are outside of Cabo right now, and we're going to talk about, I know there's some news happening in Cabo right now, but we have a sponsor, right, Claudia?
Yes, we do. Casa Calavera, which is very apropos because it's a restaurant that is themed around Day of the Dead, which is coming up in a couple weeks. They reopened this past October 1st, and right now they're offering 20% off your entire bill if you're a local. So make sure you can prove that you're a local. Go to Casa Calavera, enjoy super tasty tacos, have a great time, and start getting in the mood for Day of the Dead, which this year will have to be a virtual or at home celebration. But hey, tacos at Casa Calavera sounds like a really good thing to me.
And remember, if you are looking to get your product out there to the English-speaking community in Cabo and Los Cabos, this is the best place to do it. And you can contact us on Facebook at Cabomil News. Just send us a message and we'll get you in touch with the right people, but you can get your message out to the English-speaking community in Cabo through our program. Well, Claudia, I am very excited today because this is a special show. I am actually on location at the place that we're going to talk about. And as you and I have been speaking a lot about with a few people on the program, we've talked about trauma. We had the education group that came in and we were speaking about how the kids are dealing with trauma, with everybody with face mask and what that does. And then we were talking with Jason Stirrup of Casa Hogar about their new program and how they've brought down a somatic experiencing expert to do some work with their children. And the results they're already seeing, and just it's really groundbreaking what's happening. And we've talked a lot about how trauma stays in the body and those types of things. And there's different foundations in Los Cabos that are starting to look at this. And the other day we were thanking people from the Bajacaliforniasur Community Alliance. We were going around and giving out awards for people, all the businesses that helped during that time. And one of the heads of the business just said to me, hey, we need something for people with addictions in Los Cabos. It's a huge need. And there's just not a lot of understanding around it. So I knew I was coming to Tucson, and my sister is the clinical director at an addiction facility, and that gets people, and maybe I'm not saying that right, but they're going to correct me, but it's called Sabino Recovery. And we have her with us today. And we also have Thomas Isbell, who is the CEO and the co-founder. And before I introduce them, though, I want to take this opportunity because I have to show something here before we get started. And everyone knows my sister's name is Shara Turner. It used to be Shara Riggs. And this was Shara Riggs when she was in Arizona in 1995.
Wow.
And so I just want everybody to know this. Okay, she's got my same genes. So I just want you to see that. See how beautifully, no, she actually got the beauty and the brains of the bunch.
Wow.
But I just want you, and she was in the Miss USA pageant in 1995, correct, Shara?
Yeah.
And she didn't win, but the only reason why she didn't win is because, well, there's a couple reasons, but one is first of all, the lady that won was Miss Texas, and she went on to be Miss Universe. So there was some big competition. But also, my sister did not wear the dress that I wanted her to wear. She wore a dress that someone else wanted to wear.
That's why. That's why.
The judges didn't like it. But the great news about her losing was I got to go to the party afterwards, and I got to console all the other losers of the contest.
With their mascara that was running from their tears, right?
Well, and I just kept saying to him, hey, Miss Kentucky, you should have won.
Yeah.
I was there for you. I knew you should have won. And then I'd dance with her, and then I'd go over to, Miss Louisiana and tell her she should have won.
Of course. Aw, so kind. So kind of you, Corey.
Anyway, that was a long time ago. And I really haven't changed that much now, but that was a long time ago. Well, I'm very excited. I want to bring in my sister here, Shara Turner, a very serious person, and also has a lot of fun. But she is the clinical director at Sabino Recovery. Shara, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
And I also want to introduce Thomas Isbell, who the CEO and founder of Sabino Recovery. And Thomas has some ties to the Baja Peninsula as well, which we'll talk about in a minute. But Thomas, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and Sabino Recovery and what you do here?
Well, Corey, thanks for having us on. This is an awesome opportunity. So, it's been a long road to get from Texas to here. So I was born and raised in Texas, hook 'em horns. Traumatic to be a Longhorn football fan at the moment, but
yeah,
that's a whole nother podcast.
We won't talk about that.
Yeah, we don't have time for that. So I grew up wonderful family, household, all of the things that you wouldn't think caused trauma or addictions. And just kind of got to high school, and next thing I know, I was so I'm a recovered drug addict, alcoholic. I've been sober for over 10 years. And it started with me right from the beginning. The first drink I had, it was a aha moment. And I drink to get drunk. Right from an early age, 8th grade, freshman year in high school. And, that kind of quickly turned into marijuana and pills. And I was just kind of one of those guys that was like, who has fun stuff in their pockets? Let's all put it on the table and start doing stuff. It's time to party. And, getting to the University of Texas and being in a fraternity, to be honest with you, that life didn't look much different than everybody else. If you would have lined up all of my fraternity brothers and said, which ones are the drug addicts and alcoholics, you'd have said all of them based on their behavior and actions. But that's not really what the disease is. And so kind of at college and really the University of Texas, I left about my junior year, and that's how Baja came in. Was I had a very traumatic experience where, for one, I got a letter on Christmas break from the University of Texas saying, please don't come back for a little while. So I had to hide that from my parents. Then that night was out drinking and rolled my car a couple times with a bunch of people in it and just kind of flipped it back over, drove it home, thought, oh, no one will notice. And then the next night was at this big Deb presentation, ironically enough, of being presented to the world as success. And that night, long story short, actually watched one of my best friends fall off a cliff into a river. And I tried to save him and couldn't, and had PTSD, had no idea what that was, but couldn't go back to school. Luckily, I didn't have anywhere to go, so it kind of worked out. And another friend called and said, hey, I'm going on this basically adventure, and it's in Baja, California, and it's 4 months of hiking, sea kayaking, and sailing. And thought, well, okay, I've got nothing else to do. And it was one of the greatest adventures of my entire life. And I truly fell in love with the desert. Just got an appreciation for beauty in a way that I had never had before. And so then after that, went to Arkansas, kind of the addiction, everything came back.
Yeah. Before I want to ask you a question about that because, the trauma, obviously we're going to get into some more conversations about trauma and obviously you had some severe trauma at that moment with the PTSD, but when you saw your best friend, I guess, fall off a cliff and go into the river. And then you came to the Baja, you went on this trip and it was with a group, right? This was a specialty group that would take people that had challenges or how did that work? Because I think they're still operating in the Baja.
Yeah, so it's the National Outdoor Leadership School called Knowles. And it is a school. I actually got college credit for it. And they have different trips all over the world, really. I mean, they're a very large organization. And it's not for like troubled kids. It's not like a treatment wilderness program. In fact, they had to kind of stabilize and prove that like I was okay because it's kind of dangerous. You don't just take anybody. So it definitely wasn't like for that or created for that. It was just something that, came up that I had an opportunity to do. And, Baja is like one of their packages, or classes that they offer. I mean, mine was called, Semester in Baja. And yeah, there were probably 8 students in my group from 18 to 35. I was, I think, 21 at the time. And then we had, one main instructor that was with us the whole time. And then as we transitioned from hiking to sea kayaking to sailing, we would get like different instructors that kind of specialized in each of those.
And you told me you started in Loreto, correct? And then kind of went through the desert and you were telling me it went all around, maybe through La Paz and Espiritu Santo Island. You spent some time on there. What an incredible, and you were away from civilization for a lot of it. You were just out in the middle of the desert basically, or out kayaking or.
Yeah, literally in the middle of nowhere. We kind of flew into Loreto, went to their base camp. They kind of taught you how to survive in the desert for like a whopping 2 days. There was a lot of like, this is dangerous. This is dangerous. Like, I can't believe I'm doing this. I had 2 days of training and that was basically how to tie a couple knots. Now, like, we didn't even have tents. It was just tarps. And I'm sleeping with, hanging my watch on a cholla cactus and there's all kinds of critters around. And it's just like, I remember going, if my mom knew what I was doing right now, she'd be so pissed off at you guys. Like, this is dangerous. But it was amazing. It was like, you figured out, how to survive pretty quick. And really the hardest part about it, kind of with all things, it wasn't even the trip. It was getting along with the rest of the people in your group because you all affected each other so great. An example is if you're in one little small cook group and you've been kayaking or hiking all day and you're starving and one of the girls is responsible for cooking your dinner, which might be rice, and she gets to talking and burns your rice, we got a problem.
Burned rice when you're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
So, it was, and I was telling Shara, I picked up my journal that I had and just some of the stories and stuff that we went through, it took me back and it was like, I can't believe like I got to experience that and do that. It was the adventure of a lifetime, but so hard.
Yeah. And hopefully we're going to spend a little bit more time on that because I'm interested in some more what you did on that. Tell us about Sabino recovery and how did you come to that point and start it, and then tell us a little bit about it, and then we're going to bring Shar in and talk a little bit what she's doing.
So yeah, after college, just kind of addiction and everything got a lot worse for me, and I got to a point of really just like something has to change in a really big way, and kind of through my own personal spiritual experience had this moment of, I'm either going to get worse or I'm going to get better today, and was really terrified of what that path worse looked like for me. Because for me, it was death. Like, I'm going to die. And so by the grace of God, my path went the other way. And 2 days later, I had checked myself into a treatment facility in, South Texas. And then, had an amazing experience. Loved it. Finally had people like speak truth to me. It was like this thing that I always knew was wrong with me, and somebody were like pointing it out, like in my mind, my thinking, my actions, my I had someone look at me and go, hey man, like, you're not an asshole, you're sick. And it was like, wow, like that, because that's how I felt, the shame and the trauma of like, I'm a bad person, and I'm doing bad things because I'm a bad person. And it was like, all of a sudden, wait a minute, like I can't control it. Like as deep down, I know that's not who I am. And so from there, I was like, I'm done with this. I'm not doing anything else. I'm putting all life on hold until I get this. Cause I knew if I don't get sober, I've got nothing. So stayed in Kerrville for a year. From there, had an amazing opportunity where one of my really good friends, who's actually a country singer in Texas, randomly calls me and says, hey, I want you to come to Fort Worth and see me. And I was like, for what? Drive down there the next morning. We walk into this country club with all these people in suits. And he's like, hey, everybody meet my new tournament director, Thomas Isbell. And I was like, tournament for what? He's like, you and I are going to throw a big golf tournament at Pebble Beach and start a foundation. I was like, I have no idea how to do that. He's like, figure it out. So started a foundation, was helping people, but about 3 years in sobriety, this close to relapsing because I'd never dealt with my trauma and started to go crazy and didn't have all these wonderful things that people in AA were telling me my life was supposed to have, because this trauma experience was still just like embedded in me and I didn't know why. So started going to some therapy in Fort Worth, amazing therapist, started, kind of managing in his sober living home. And then I kind of, again, out of nowhere, had a friend, another co-founder, randomly call me and say, hey, like, what are you up to? And we were just chatting. And he said, I've got this idea, this place in Tucson. I don't have any, but we need some money. And I was like, I know a lot of rich people. All I do is ask people for money. Like, look, I can do that. And he flew me out here the next day. I looked at the property, which is a boarding school that was built in 1929. And it was so run down. I was like, I want no piece of this. Like, this is a bad idea and I'm going home. And luckily he's pretty persistent. And honestly, kind of next thing I know, I was like, I guess I am moving to Tucson, Arizona, and we're going to give this thing a shot. And I had no experience running a treatment center, advertising for a treatment center. My experience was I went to one and I knew what it was like to be a resident, a patient, period. So there was a lot of learning on the fly, and found if you ask people for help, they're really willing to give it. If you just humbly say, hey, will you help me? Like, what would you do? And that's really what started the success of this place, is just other people hopping in and saying, you should try this, you should try that. And then, ultimately it's hiring all the right people like Shara. I'm not the expert in clinical stuff. She is. I just try to not get in her way.
Well, we'll bring Shara in for a second. Shara, I grew up with her, so I know her very well. And every friend of hers, everybody that knows her, they all come to her for advice. She's the person that everyone wants to talk with. Totally non-judgmental. It's amazing. Whenever I get in trouble, I call Shara. When everyone does that. And so I know that she's doing an incredible job here, and just, it's so nice to have you on the show, Shara. And Thomas was talking about trauma, and I know you and I have had many conversations about that, about how it's in the body. But first, just tell us a little bit about your time here at Sabino and what you do, and we can get into some conversation about trauma in the body and how do you get it out. And welcome.
Well, so interestingly enough, I spent a lot of time being a stay-at-home mom. It wasn't until later in my life that I decided to utilize the skills that I always knew were inside of me to help, that I wanted to help other people. And I started that career in the public system, which is obviously a very needed thing. But a few years back, I went through my own transformation where I started to get more into kind of naturopathic medicine and holistic treatment, and I realized that crisis and medication management were not going to make people better. You had to treat the whole person, the whole body, from the bottom up. And it's kind of interesting, as I went through that transformation, Sabino Recovery found me right when I was going through that. And I tell everyone, the day I walked in here for my interview, I knew I was home. I knew this is where I belonged. And I've had a lot of people in my life that were addicts. I've lost people to addiction. And I always wondered, gosh, isn't there enough out there that you're grateful for to keep you sober? I never really got it until I started diving into the piece of trauma. And it really is the trauma that lives in our body that keeps us going back to what we call in treatment maladaptive coping mechanisms. And that's not just drugs and alcohol. That's gambling, sex, shopping, internet addiction, right? Anything that distracts you from listening to your body are those maladaptive coping mechanisms, but we use them to bring balance to a really dysregulated nervous system. And that's at the crux of what's happening. You know, we do brain scans out here, we do what we call neurofeedback, and if you could see the brain of a traumatized individual, you would see how much it affects their functioning. So it's not, you know, a lot of people say that you know, bad choices are just, or bad behaviors are just bad choices. And that's not always true. It's a dysregulated nervous system and an overactivated amygdala, which is that survival part of the brain. And until you address those components, people continue to relapse or go back to old behaviors. And that's really what Sabino recovery does. I mean, that's what we specialize in, is trauma and all of the maladaptive coping mechanisms that ensue from that trauma.
And so how many people come to Sabino Recovery? How big is it? I mean, I'm here on property. It looks very big. There's beautiful facilities. There's a pool. There's an equine therapy area. There's a rope course that I see. We're in the, if anybody knows Tucson, we're next to Sabino Canyon, right in the shadow of the Catalina Mountains. It's incredibly beautiful. If I was needing to recover, this is definitely where I would want to come. It's beautiful. And then, but just tell us a little bit about the facility and what you do, and what does is there a normal patient? I don't want to say that. How long do they stay here? What does it look like if someone comes in for recovery?
Yeah. So we are a 24-bed unit. So that's our capacity, is 24 residents. We have no desire to go beyond that right now because we're small, we can be really individualized. A lot of treatment facilities, someone comes in, they're diagnosed with something or a label's put on them and they're put on a track, and that's what they do. So here we individualize everyone's treatment plan. And we're sitting on 144 acres, so it is expansive and beautiful. There's lots of space. We offer a lot of different experiential therapies like equine, ropes course. You know, we have kind of a concierge list of services like Reiki, acupuncture, massage, all of which enable the resident to get in touch with their body. Because what happens primarily with any trauma really, but primarily with developmental trauma and specifically sexual developmental trauma, is people get very disconnected from their bodies. And so our number one goal when they come in is to provide a space of safety and reconnect them to their body. And they can stay anywhere from 35, 45 to 60 days. So that's kind of the length of our program. The minimum 35 and up to 60.
Claudia, you better jump in here because you know me.
Yeah, well, actually, I have a question because nowadays, and it is very common to want to deal with everything in your life through medication. Something to wake up, something to slow down, something to go to sleep, something to focus. How do you see that trend that is also kind of like reinforcing everything that we see? If you're watching TV or you're online, there's always these recommendations on what to take to make your life better, but it's through chemicals. How do you deal with that when what you're trying to do, as you're saying, is reconnecting with your body? And more, unless you are this part of the world that is into fitness, we have a way more sedentary life where you're almost absolutely disconnected with your body.
Yeah, Tanya, you are so right. And, you know, it's unfortunate that the culture of our climate right now in the world is the quick fix, right? You know, people scrolling through Facebook looking for the perfect thing to make them feel better, look better, do better, whatever it is. So that advertising, you know, really perpetuates that dysregulation that's happening in the body. We have a full psychiatry team at Sabino, and their tagline is prescribing with purpose. They only prescribe what's absolutely necessary. to get that resident to a place where they can start doing some of that underlying processing. As well, I kind of mentioned earlier that we also utilize nutraceuticals, so that's natural medicine. You know, for instance, GABA. You know, people that have taken benzodiazepines like a Xanax or a Valium, that's a GABA drug. Same with alcohol. So there's natural ways to increase that GABA, as well as other neurotransmitters like serotonin. You know, that we have like 5-HTP. There's ways that you can increase. Really something that we focus on while we're doing this deeper trauma work through EMDR, somatic experiencing, equine therapy. So much of that magic happens by grounding people in the present moment, because we spend most of our life worried about what's going to happen tomorrow or regretful and resentful about the past, right? Two places that we can do nothing about. The only thing we have any control over is in the moment. So a huge focus of our recovery is grounding people in the present moment. And again, that's through yoga, meditation, all the other modalities that we use.
And Char, we're
teaching people to slow down. So sorry.
We're gonna stop you right there. We're gonna come back after break. We got to take a quick break, but stay with us, and we're very interested in more to hear more of what you have to say about that. But thanks everybody. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
In 3, 2.
Welcome back to Cabomil News and Community Update. We are with Thomas Isbell and Shara Turner of Sabino Recovery. And we were talking right before the break just about quick fixes versus getting into the body. And I just want to tell a quick story about something that just happened to me, which I'm about to reveal something here. I had a colonic yesterday, which I always get every time I come to Phoenix. I have the most incredible colonic person, and it's an open system. So if anybody knows what that is, that's the one you should take. But anyway, she told me that she's been seeing all these people in the since COVID started, that are incredibly constipated, like 2 or 3 weeks, and they're not letting it go, even when they're getting the colonic. And so it takes a few times. And what she mentioned to me is that everyone is in this fight or flight moment in their life. And COVID has put us into that. And we are going to see, I mean, she's just seeing the physical manifestation, which is where this happens in the body. And I mean, that's a pretty big physical manifestation of people holding on and being afraid. But what she's seeing is in what I think we're all going to see through after this is the trauma that's being caused by this news media. Just everything's about fear, and you're going to die, and you better have a mask, you better all these things. And it is going to be causing a lot of things in the future. And I wanted to take this opportunity with Thomas and Shara here about COVID and about what's happened, and what are some things that people can do to release that fear. Are there things they can do? And when can they realize that they are in fight or flight and they've been there for a long time?
You want me to answer that?
Yes.
Which way, whoever.
Okay, yeah, no. In fact, it's funny that you said, because I actually, when this whole COVID thing started, I wrote an article that's on our website about what people can do in the midst of this pandemic and in the midst of an election year to kind of regulate that nervous system. Because again, I'm going to just continue to reiterate how important that regulation is for the nervous system. And one of the things that I would say is turn off the TV. 100% turn off the TV. Because you can only get your brain can only process so much information. And when you're continually hearing this dichotomy of it's scary, it's not, I mean, no one knows where to turn. So turning off the TV. Biologically, we are meant to connect to people. We are not meant to be isolated. And that's not me speaking to whatever your beliefs are about COVID or whatever you think about social distancing, but finding someone in your life that you feel safe around and making sure that you're connecting to them on a daily basis. It's so very, very important, especially if you're in early in recovery or even in recovery, that you've got some kind of support group that's helping you out. And even if it's via Zoom, I mean, it's not the most ideal, but just making that effort to connect. And, you know, I know we talked a little bit about exercise earlier, and that can also become a maladaptive coping mechanisms, but the body is meant to move. It is not meant to sit still. And so if we're not getting some kind of physical exercise every day, that dysregulates the nervous system as well, because our bodies aren't meant to just sit and be sedentary. So those are just some ideas. And to attempt not to engage in the rhetoric on a daily basis. So trying to convince someone that you're right, or convince someone, just releasing your need to be right, and again, bringing yourself back in the present moment. And one of the most amazing things, the ways to do that, and Corey, you can speak to this, is meditation. Meditation is one of our superpowers that is very underutilized and under talked about. And it's one of the most amazing, powerful things that you can do without going anywhere, just in the comfort of your own space. So.
No, and one of the things, I mean, we've talked a lot about this, but meditation, there's a great app called Waking Up that I recommend to everyone. It's Sam Harris. It's a great way. I don't want to call it a gateway drug in the light of an addiction conversation, but it is a gateway drug into meditation. And it's a great, he's got a 50-day program. I highly recommend it. It's free to start with, but it's really a way to connect. And how, you know, maybe one of you can tell us, how would someone recognize if they're in fight or flight? Because there's a lot of people going around that are so afraid. I don't even think they realize, or they realize that they need help, or they should talk with someone, or get off Facebook and quit being divided. Like the social dilemma told us, Claudia, we talked about. Facebook is not relaxing either. But what are some manifestations in the body besides constipation that we just talked about? What are some other things that maybe people go, oh, wait a minute, maybe I'm just in that part of my brain?
Yeah.
I would say, because you're right, and that's a really good point. I mean, and when someone's really depressed or full of anxiety, it's hard to recognize that in yourself. You know, so for one, I would say, you know, and that's all just the thing about being isolated and not being around the people maybe that love you is, you know, I know a lot of times for me and for others, you have, you know, family members that call us worried about their daughter. You know, I'm worried that she's isolating, she's doing this. And that usually happens a lot more when, you know, we're not social distancing and you haven't seen somebody for 6 weeks or however long it's been. So, and it's really hard in those moments, you know, to raise your hand and say, please, like, I need help. So one, you know, just truly being in your body, and Char brought up a good point, like the TV. I mean, like if I watch the news for more than 10 minutes, like I start doing this and like I start revving myself up, and it's like, I'm not gonna be able to sleep tonight because my heart rate's going, you know. And so, and I even, like my Apple Watch, you know, part of it is, you know, it's the good and the bad of technology. You know, it's, you know, the social dilemma is, you know, how, I mean, I've seen that too. It scares the crud out of you. And yet here we are on Facebook Live talking about good things that can come from, you know, so it's kind of the chicken and the egg. But I mean, like my watch, you know, like I have it to where it makes me just work on breathing. Like it reminds me, you know, and that's the kind of stuff in my body. I mean, I try once a day just to get in our golf cart, drive up to our stables with my dog. And I'm not a good meditator because my mind goes too much, but I just sit and just try and be still. You know, it's like, I feel like sometimes people have to come up with these huge plans. And it's like, just start with something, you know, and sometimes it's just be still. It's reach out to one person and say, hey, I'm not doing so well. You know, like it doesn't always have to be this epiphany, amazing moment. And then this, you know, 20-page, you know, letter of how you're going to get all your life back together that's overwhelming to begin with. Like just do something and start that and let it work, you know, and then see the results of it. And, you know, get online and look for stuff like this. Go to, there's so many resources out there, you know, like you, just like you said, you named an app. I could name 100 different websites, apps that, you know, you want to learn about meditation. All you have to do is Google meditation. You know, it's like, it's not overcomplicate this, but like, you're going to have start, you have to start, pick something and start. You're going to have to engage and I mean, kind of fight for it, if that makes sense.
One thing that I see nowadays, and I think it's the same everywhere, it doesn't matter where you're from, is there's this sense that everybody has to be an overachiever. You have to be the best at whatever it is. And if you add that to the whole pandemic reality, you start feeling really frustrated every day because you are in lockdown, you are isolated, you are all these things that in your head justify the fact that you're not achieving much. So how can people cope with that beyond, because definitely, honestly, if I didn't meditate in the morning, I would probably be wanted by the police or something by now. But how do you come to terms with the fact that, look, I'm just a normal person. I'm not going to be the best anything, and that's okay. Because often that fact of feeling like you're not doing enough leads to some self-destructive behavior. So how can you fix that? Well, I know it's a whole thing, but give us a tip on that.
And I mean, it's a great question, Claudia, and it's also a really, really long answer.
We'll have another show.
I know, but it's true. Those thoughts of not being enough are usually rooted in a family of origin issue from childhood, from trauma. That voice, that tape recorder in your head, I'm never going to be enough. So meditation is very helpful for that. Not everybody in the world that's dysregulated has to go to treatment, obviously. There's therapists, seek out assistance, seek out help, talk to somebody. If that's really one of your narratives that you can't live up to anything, you never feel like you're enough, that's when maybe you want to go and get a therapist. It's those folks that are so dysregulated that their coping mechanisms are taking over their life and messing up their relationships, and they feel they have no control over it. That's when we would indicate some type of residential treatment so they can kind of give them a reset or restart. But beyond that, I mean, of course, I'm a big fan of therapy for anyone. So
yeah, even in Cabo, well, in Baja California Sur, during COVID, it was the first time that the state government opened up a toll-free number, and it's aligned to psychologists that you can get over the phone free consultations because they realized how people were being affected by just being isolated.
Yeah. Well, and I always say this little voice in our head, this tape recorder that goes around and around, that doesn't really usually tell you the truth. But your physiology never lies to you. Your instincts, your gut feeling, that doesn't lie to you. But we can't quiet this long enough to listen to our bodies. So again, it goes back to that connection between the mind and the body that's really important.
Char, you and I were speaking last night over dinner, and we were talking about gut health and how that relates now, how that's so important to addiction, trauma, all these other things, but really how healthy your gut is. You want to expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, and we touched on it a little bit earlier, but in the last 40 to 50 years, the rates of depression and anxiety have risen in direct correlation with the amount of pesticides that are being used in our foods and the amount of processed foods that we as a world are consuming. That is no coincidence, right? We get our neurotransmitters from our food. So, for example, tryptophan. We all know what tryptophan is. It's not just found in turkey, by the way. It's found in a lot of different meats and veggies. It's found in a lot of different foods. But tryptophan converts to 5-HTP, which converts to serotonin in the brain. Serotonin is that chemical that we need for relaxation, for happiness. Same with dopamine. I mean, all the different neurotransmitters we could find in our food. And years ago they did when things were grown. So really focusing on eating a whole diet, not preservatives. Obviously not everyone can eat organic, but as much as possible, just eating a whole healthy diet is really important. And there's a lot of supplementation that people can take to increase their gut health. I mean, probiotics, one of them. But you cannot have a healthy mind without having a healthy gut, because that's where we're getting all of those neurotransmitters that feed into the brain. So.
Well, and I just to give something in Cabo that people could do. There's at California Ranch Market, they have something called the gut shot, and I take one every day, and it's an incredible mix of, I don't even know what's in there, ginger and vinegar, and there's just tons of things in there. But I feel much better when I take it. But it's a good way to rebalance your gut, and it definitely, I have a history of a little bit of anxiety and depression, and I have worked through it through yoga, meditation, and also really working on my gut health. And I know, Shara, you and I have shared that. And it's just fascinating. And when we talk about the pesticides, we specifically talk about glyphosate and Roundup. And that's really when that got legalized in 92, I think, 93, you saw the incidences of many things shoot up. And it's a dirty little secret that a lot of people don't talk about. They're starting to talk about it. and hopefully we're gonna get some more conversation about that and become like Europe, where that is banned. And if anybody's been to Europe and you eat there for a little while, you feel better and you feel less inflamed, and you come back here and within a week you're inflamed again. So it's incredible. It's incredible what we're eating and how that's affecting the gut health and all the other things that we're discussing today. There's so many topics to talk about, and I've got a list here, but we have a few more minutes, and I just want to touch on, I know, Shar and Thomas, you have an equine therapy program, and that's such a cool thing to do for people. Can you talk a little bit about that and why being around horses helps people, what it does for people, and yeah, just tell us about it.
Thomas, you want to talk about that?
Sure.
Yeah.
You're the equine therapist. I'll be happy to talk about it. But I mean, I think my perspective is from the people that have never done it and don't have an education in it like you do. And I mean, what I've seen in people is a horse. It's the most amazing thing how a horse can just break down walls that therapy and other modalities can't even get close to. I mean, I have seen a Navy SEAL, an ex-Navy SEAL, that wouldn't let anybody talk to him about anything, get out there and cry in an arena with a horse. Wow. And you just go, how, oh my gosh, you know? And so horses are amazing animals that are literally, in my opinion, I mean, they are all fight or flight, you know, I mean, and so just the way that they can sense what's going on in a human and almost kind of like read you from the inside out is amazing. And some of the stuff that I see our residents do, I mean, sometimes I go up there and like one of the horses like painted, it's got all this stuff on it. And like, what did they do up here today? You know, like that's amazing. And, you know, and then now, I mean, we take it beyond that with, you know, like allowing our residents to go on like rides up in the canyon, you know, which is bilateral stimulation just in its natural, you know, existence of doing it. It's almost this, and they're with Shara, who's a LPC, one of the most qualified person you'll ever meet on a horse to be talking about your feelings and what's going on, while the horse is like making your brain act in a way that's very therapeutic, and it's all happening so naturally, and you're out in the desert. It's not, we're so far from anything institutional. And that's what I love about our equine therapy and everything up there is it's just like this space. And when you're with people like Shara, that you just, stuff just comes out. And horse, I don't know how they do it. Shara can speak to this. Maybe there's a secret sauce. These horses, they're just like little soul seekers.
Wow. So, no, that was awesome, Thomas. And I just want to speak really, there's some mechanics around that, right? So, you know, human beings have this big frontal lobe. Horses don't have that. That's where we get judgment. That's where we get our discerning ability. Horses, the biggest system in their brain is the limbic system, the emotional control center. So they're just responding to energy and emotion. They don't judge people. They don't look at, you know, they don't think about things the way we do. When you're in the arena with a horse, they oftentimes become a mirror of whatever we're bringing into that arena. So it's instantaneous feedback of what's going on with us. I've seen the most amazing, and I could do a whole show on equine therapy. It's unbelievable. And also horses are prey animals, so their very survival depends on living in the moment. They can't afford to live in the present or live in the future or the past. So just being in their presence gives us that sense of mindfulness and grounds us back in the moment. And it really is, Thomas is so spot on. I've just seen incredible things happen with people. So
wow.
Yeah.
And what do you do with, and now I know you go ride them. Do people take care of the horses? When you say equine therapy, it must be multifaceted. What is it that you're doing with the horses? It's just having around them, or?
Well, really, there's a lot of different, it's an experiential therapy. There's a lot of different things that you can do. I have a list of activities that we do, like we do some horse painting. I'll set up an obstacle course and I blindfold a resident. They have to lead the horse through the obstacle course with the help of the other people. So you're eliciting trust, communication, boundary setting, and then we observe how the horses respond. I will ask a resident, okay, the horse just did this. Why do you think they did that? And the story they tell about the horse is very indicative of their own narrative in their mind. So again, they go, oh, wow, yeah, that's what I do. And that's why I'm telling that story. So again, it gets them out of their head for a moment and they can see right in front of them because how they show up in that arena is typically how they're showing up in life. So, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. Claudia, you have any more questions about equine, or before I jump into something else?
No, there is actually a place here in Cabo, well, there in Cabo, that does equine therapy. They work with children with autism,
Yes,
and
yes.
it is incredible because the way that they connect, and I had never heard what you're saying and how they react to the person, but I've seen some of those therapies there in Cabo. I'm still in a Cabo state of mind, but wow, I just want to go to Sabino Recovery and
Oh, well, come out, Claudia.
do a little of everything.
Come visit us sometime.
Yeah.
It's absolutely beautiful here. I mean, it's amazing. It's an amazing facility. And Thomas, when you said that you first came here and it was run down, obviously someone has put a lot of work into this because it is beautiful.
Yes, we did about a 6-month remodel that lasted a year. You know how that goes.
That's how remodels always happen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, and I mean, the interesting thing is it was a school, and like our gym used to be the social studies classroom. And so we would just walk in these buildings and go, now, how are we going to make that into that with this? And,
Wow.
And that's why, I mean, this place has a lot of unique character based on that, because we've definitely made it our own and continue to do so. So that's kind of part of the special charm of this place is, I mean, Shara's been here a little over a year. We've been open almost 5 years, but so much of what we have, and even the way that things look here, like she's brought, and that's kind of the way that, I like to do it with all things. Like any employee here that has a good idea or wants to make some changes, it's like, let's all sit and talk about it. I love good ideas.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
that collaborative approach has just really worked out well for us, and in essence created, an amazing property that continues to transform and get better.
Well, we have about 5 minutes left before we're going to take our second break. And I know, Shar, you're running to a meeting, but why don't you tell us a little bit just about how do people find Sabino Recovery? We'll put the website on the Facebook page, but how do people usually arrive? Is it a family member that calls you first? Is it them that calls you first? How do people find out about it? What's the life cycle of someone coming to treatment here?
So it's a bunch of different ways. I mean, right now half of our residents are coming from the internet, and that's a mix of Googling themselves or having a parent, it's kind of like our initial contact, a parent calling about the daughter, and sometimes the daughter or son or whomever may or may not want to come to treatment, and then you have to get an interventionist involved. And then, the other half is just through like our referent relationships. So that's, psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, other treatment centers, other levels of care, other detox centers that we have relationships with, and they, believe in what we do and have seen the work that we do. And so, someone goes into their therapist, and the therapist is one that comes to the conclusion of, hey, you need a little bit more than 1 day a week therapy. What about this place, Sabino Recovery? I think that would, that's kind of what you need. And so we'll get the call from either the therapist or that person.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And I think, Claudia, wouldn't you love to have a place like this in Cabo? I think it would be well attended, by the way. If someone wanted to, someone wanted to get through an addiction, there's no better place. And Thomas, I think you should think about it. There's a lot of wealthy people down there too. And if you know a lot of wealthy people, let's just put a place together, because it's definitely needed there. And I talk about this to a lot of people that say this all the time. We need a facility like that. And well, the good news is that Tucson's not that far from Cabo. But the cool thing about Cabo is you would attract a lot of people from all over the world. Wouldn't you agree with that, Claudia?
Definitely. You can have your Baja extension. Think about it.
It's not a bad idea.
Think about it.
I'd have to find a new clinical director for Tucson because Shara would be like, I'm going to do that place in Cabo.
Definitely still Shara for Cabo.
Yeah. I see a plan developing, Corey. I don't know.
You need to go. Well, let's say thank you to Shara. We'll keep Thomas on for a little bit.
Thank you, Shara.
Get to work. It was great having you.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Bye.
Bye.
And so just a couple more minutes. We're going to take a break, Thomas. We'll let you go too. But anything else you want to say about Sabino recovery, or yeah, just anything you want to add?
You know, I guess the only thing I would want to add is, you know, a lot of people kind of try and make beforehand, like if they're right for us, they want to make that decision before they even call. And like what we do that I'm kind of the most proud of is if someone calls us and asks for help, if we're not the right place, like, we don't just hang up on you and say, sorry, that's not going to work for us. Like we spend so much of our time and our resources helping people get to the places that are right for them. Because unfortunately in this industry, there's a lot of bad actors out there and there's a lot of bad treatment out there, and you can get worse by going to treatment. And so, you know, with the relationships that we have, obviously, I mean, if we're going to suggest somebody, it's because we have faith in them and we know that they do a really good job. So even sometimes people just calling and like allowing us to help kind of guide them in a direction, because it's a scary thing, you know, and like just Googling something that, you know, without, I mean, and just going to it, like it's just Google, and people find us on Google. So I'm not saying don't Google us and call the place, but like do your homework, you know, I mean, like we're talking about your life. We're not talking about getting a new car or a shiny new object. Like this is life for your loved one, for yourself. You deserve the best, find the best fit for you. And I know so many people think that moment of like needing help is like their greatest moment of weakness. You know, like you've reached that, you know, you hear it all the time, like, you know, that's my rock bottom. And the truth is, like, when you actually are reaching out for help, like it's the exact opposite. It's your moment of like bravery that you've never had because it's so hard. And you're finally saying, I can't do this all by myself. I need help. And the cool thing is there are a lot of us out there that can help. So just kind of taking the shame out of the stigma of treatment would be the thing that, you know, I know we're trying to do the most of. Like, we all have it. We all need help. And really the bravest people are the ones that ask for it.
Well, Thomas, we're gonna end there because I think that's a perfect place to end. And just thank you for spending so much time with us. It was a true pleasure having you on the show, and hopefully we'll have you back again. We'll invite you down to Cabo and have you on.
That would be awesome.
I see a project in the future.
I'm already feeling it. I'm already thinking of who can invest in this.
I already have plans. So yeah.
Right.
Y'all already have the scissors and the big red ribbon, don't you?
Yeah, I'll help you organize the opening ceremony.
Perfect.
Well, we're gonna take a quick break. We'll be right back. And thank you, Thomas, for being with us. Everybody, we'll be right back.
Thanks for having us on.
Thank you. In 3, 2.
Welcome back to Cabomil News and Community Update. Claudia, what an incredible show. It was so fun having Thomas and Shara on from Sabino Recovery. I hope people learned a lot. Great conversation. But I know we have some news also. Can you fill us in a little bit what's going on?
We do. Well, so this week that is ending, we were at level 3, and at level 3, cemeteries are allowed to be open. Now, interesting thing about this is that for Day of the Dead, Halloween Day of the Dead, so from October 30th until November 3rd, the cemeteries in Los Cabos are going to be closed, as well as the rest of cemeteries in Bajacaliforniasur. And this is because traditionally, everybody goes to the cemeteries, and you know they do the little altares and all that. Not this year. Okay. So you want to do your altar, do it at home.
Okay, got it.
The other thing is the CCC, the Coordinating Council, which is the business sector that gets together and works together. They have also decided to discourage people from going downtown Cabo San Lucas as they traditionally do on Halloween for trick-or-treating. So
Okay.
no trick-or-treating this year, which makes me very, very sad because Halloween is like my most favorite celebration.
Well, I'm going to say something that's not very popular. I don't understand that. You actually have to wear a mask on Halloween, right? Because
Yeah,
costume. So why? Okay, I'm not going to say anything else about
don't go there, Corey. We'll get in
it. Go
trouble.
there. I'm not going to go there. Okay.
But I'm sad. I'm sad about that.
Me too.
They even have their campaign is dulce o hospital. So it's like treat or hospital. So stay home. Don't go out. Don't go downtown.
That doesn't cause kids trauma. I mean, really? That's their. I mean, come on. Okay, I'm not going to say. I'm not going to get into it.
We're going to delete this from the show.
Please delete it. It's on Facebook Live right now, so people are hearing it, and they should hear it. That's anyway. Okay, let's do the summary in Spanish.
El día de hoy tuvimos a Shar Turner y Thomas Isbell de Sabino Recovery hablando acerca del tratamiento de trauma y de adicciones de una manera holística. Hablamos también acerca de las noticias más recientes en Los Cabos con referente a la celebración de Día de Muertos. Esto fue todo.
That's it. Well, it was a wonderful show. And again, if you missed our show last week, it was with Fernando Landeros of Teleton. That was amazing.
You have to catch it. It's on Facebook Live, and it is the first time in your life you will see Corey speechless. So
he left speechless, and I think Claudia was hoping for a new Corey, but she got the old Corey this week.
It's a good Corey. I like this Corey. I like all Corys.
All right. Well, listen, everybody have a great week. It was a fun show, and who knows where we're be coming from next week? We could be all over the world now.
Hey, we might be in Europe eating good food that's good for your gut.
Everybody have a good week, and we'll see you next week on Cabomil News and Community Update.
Take care.